1 million soldiers? Humanity sees only 1 million targets. The large doors of the Galactic Council chamber opened with a deep sound that echoed through the massive room. Ambassador Marcus Kane walked inside, his black boots clicking against the smooth metal floor. Around him, hundreds of alien creatures sat in tall chairs that formed circles going up to the ceiling. Each alien looked different from the others. Some had blue skin, others had many eyes, and a few looked like giant insects. Marcus walked to the center of the room where a small platform waited for him. He wore a simple gray uniform with no decorations except for a small Earth symbol on his chest. His hair was turning white at the sides, and his face showed lines from many years of difficult work. He did not look scared or worried as he faced the crowd of alien beings. At the highest level of the chamber, a creature stood up. It was much taller than Marcus and had 4 strong arms covered in dark red scales. Its head was long like a horse, but with sharp teeth that showed when it spoke. This was War Prime Thexus of the Vorthak Empire. "Human," Thexus said, his voice deep and rough like rocks grinding together. "You stand before the greatest military force this galaxy has ever seen. Your small planet Earth and all human colonies will surrender within 72 hours, or we will destroy everything you have built." The chamber filled with worried whispers from the other alien races. Many of them had fought the Vorthak Empire before and lost badly. The Vorthak had conquered 17 different star systems in the past 50 years. Their ships were huge and their weapons could turn planets into dust. Marcus listened without moving. He kept his hands behind his back and his face showed no emotion at all. War Prime Thexus pressed a button on his chair, and the air above the chamber filled with glowing pictures. The images showed space filled with Vorthak warships. There were so many ships that they blocked out the stars behind them. Each ship was 3 kilometers long and covered with weapons that glowed red in the darkness. "Behold our fleet," Thexus said, pointing with one of his 4 arms. 1 million soldiers aboard 100,000 ships. Each vessel carries enough firepower to crack a moon in half. Your human weapons are like throwing rocks at a mountain. An alien with pale blue skin and large eyes leaned forward in her chair. This was Diplomat Lyra of the Etherian people. "War Prime Thexus," she said softly. "Perhaps we could find a peaceful solution to this problem." Thexus turned his long head toward her and showed his sharp teeth. The time for peace ended when humans refused to pay tribute to the Empire. They think their small fleet can protect them. "We have seen their ships. They are weak and few," another alien spoke up. This one looked like a giant ant with wings and wore a translator device around its neck. "Human ambassador," it said in a buzzing voice. "The hive mind has calculated your chances of survival. They are less than 1%. Please consider surrender to save your people." Marcus finally moved. He took 1 step forward and looked up at War Prime Thexus. "You say you have 1 million soldiers?" "Yes, human. 1 million of the finest warriors in the galaxy. They have never known defeat. And 100,000 ships, each one capable of destroying your entire home fleet." Marcus nodded slowly. "I see." He reached into his uniform pocket and pulled out a small device that looked like a phone. The chamber became very quiet as all the aliens watched him. "You have given us 72 hours, Marcus said. "That is very generous." He held up the device and pressed a single button on its side. "Computer, this is Ambassador Kane. Authorization code Alpha 779. Execute War Protocol Omega." A voice came from the device, clear enough for everyone in the chamber to hear. "War Protocol Omega acknowledged. All ghost fleets are now active. Hunter-killer teams are moving to positions. Lazarus Protocol is warming up. Good hunting, Ambassador." The device went quiet. Marcus put it back in his pocket and looked around the chamber. Many of the aliens were whispering to each other now, confused by what they had just heard. War Prime Thexus laughed, a sound like metal scraping against stone. "Empty words, human. Your threats do not frighten the Vorthak Empire." "I made no threats," Marcus said calmly. "I simply accepted your generous offer of 72 hours. Far away from the Galactic Council chamber, things were happening that no alien could see. On the planet Mars, underground bases that had been dark for years suddenly filled with light. Thousands of humans in military uniforms ran to their stations, starting up machines that had been waiting in silence. In the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter, objects that looked like large rocks began to change. Their surfaces opened up to reveal sleek metal ships hidden inside. These ships had been waiting for months, their crews living in the cold and dark. eating freeze-dried food and breathing recycled air. Near the moons of Saturn, construction yards that appeared empty on all sensors suddenly buzzed with activity. Ships that did not exist on any official list began to power up their engines. These vessels were built for one purpose: to kill anything that threatened humanity. On Earth itself, in laboratories buried deep under mountains, scientists in white coats began the final preparations for weapons that had never been tested in real battle. These were not normal weapons that exploded or shot bullets. These were weapons that could think and learn and adapt to any enemy they faced. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Marcus began walking toward the exit. As he moved, he spoke without looking back at War Prime Thexus. "You counted your soldiers," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the large room. "That was smart. Good generals always know their numbers." He reached the large doors and stopped. "But you made one mistake." "What mistake, human?" Thexus growled. Marcus turned around and looked directly at the War Prime. For the first time since entering the chamber, he smiled. It was not a happy smile or a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that has just spotted its prey. "You counted your soldiers," Marcus said again. "We counted our targets." The doors closed behind him with a sound like thunder. In the chamber, the aliens sat in shocked silence. Diplomat Lyra was the first to speak. What did he mean by that? War Prime Thexus stood up from his chair, all four of his arms clenched into fists. "It means nothing. Human words are always full of empty boasting. In 72 hours their worlds will burn." But even as he said these words, reports were beginning to reach the Vorthak fleet. Ships on the outer edge of the formation were reporting strange sensor readings. Objects were moving in the darkness between stars. Too small to be ships, but too large to be asteroids. The hunt had begun, and for the first time in their history, the Vorthak Empire was not the hunter, they were the prey. 1,000,000 soldiers? Humanity sees only 1,000,000 targets, Captain. Elena Rodriguez floated in the command chair of her ship, watching screens that showed nothing but empty space. Her ship, the Night's Edge, was hidden inside a large asteroid 3 million kilometers from Mars. The asteroid looked normal from the outside, but inside, it was hollow. The ship fit perfectly in the carved-out space like a sword in its sheath. Elena had short black hair and scars on her hands from years of military service. She wore a dark blue uniform with no lights or bright colors. Everything on her ship was designed to be invisible. The walls were painted black, the screens were dimmed low, and even the air recycling system ran quieter than a whisper. "Captain," said Lieutenant David Park from his station near the back of the bridge, "long-range sensors are picking up the Vorthak fleet. They are still 6 hours away from the outer edge of our solar system." Elena nodded but did not speak. Her crew of 20 people had been living in this hidden space for 3 months, waiting for this moment. They ate cold food from packages, drank recycled water that tasted like metal, and slept in shifts so the ship never made any sound that might give them away. "How many ships?" Elena asked quietly. "Sensors count 98,712 vessels," Park replied, "all of them big enough to carry thousands of troops." Elena smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Good, more targets." In the cargo bay of the Night's Edge, technical specialist Robert Chen worked on devices that looked nothing like normal weapons. They were small, about the size of a football and covered in sensors and tiny arms that moved like spider legs. Each one contained a computer brain that could think and learn faster than any human. "How are our little friends doing?" Elena asked through the communication system. "Ready for deployment, Captain," Robert answered. "Each unit has been programmed with the complete database of Vorthak ship designs. They know every weak point, every system, every way to get inside without being detected. These were humanity's secret weapon. Not big guns or powerful explosives, but small thinking machines that could adapt to any situation. They were called hunters, and once released, they would find their way onto enemy ships and begin their work." Elena looked at her crew. Each person had been chosen from thousands of volunteers. They were the best pilots, the smartest engineers, and the most dangerous fighters that humanity could find. But more than that, they understood something that the Vorthak Empire did not. Humans had been predators for millions of years before they reached the stars. "Status report from all ghost ships," Elena ordered. Around the solar system, hidden in asteroids behind moons, and drifting in the cold space between planets, 300 ships like the Night's Edge came alive. Their captains reported in one by one. Each ship had a crew of specialists and a cargo bay full of hunters ready to be deployed. All ships report ready. Captain, said Communication Officer Lisa Wong. Operation Silent Death is go. The Vorthak fleet moved through space in perfect formation. Their ships were arranged in groups of 100, with each group spread out like the points of a star. War Prime Thexus commanded from the center ship, a massive vessel called the Iron Fist that was 5 kilometers long and carried 50,000 soldiers. Report, Thexus ordered from his command throne. All ships are maintaining position, said his second-in-command, a younger Vorthak named Vex. No sign of human resistance. Their main fleet appears to be gathered near their moon, just as our spies reported. Thexus looked at the tactical display showing the human fleet. 47 ships, all much smaller than Vorthak vessels. Pathetic. This will be over in minutes once we reach their world. What Thexus could not see were the ghost ships waiting in the darkness. Human technology had advanced far beyond what the Vorthak spies had reported. Each hidden ship was coated with materials that absorbed sensor beams instead of reflecting them back. They were invisible to every scanning method the Vorthak Empire had ever developed. Elena watched her screens as the enemy fleet passed by her hiding place. The Vorthak ships were huge and powerful, but they moved in predictable patterns. Their formation was perfect for fighting other fleets in open battle, but terrible for protecting against small, fast attacks from unexpected directions. Begin deployment, Elena ordered. The Night's Edge opened small ports along its hull, and dozens of hunters drifted out into space. They looked like pieces of debris or small asteroids, but each one was moving toward a different Vorthak ship. The hunters used tiny jets of compressed gas to change direction, making no heat signature that enemy sensors could detect. All around the solar system, the other ghost ships were doing the same thing. Thousands of hunters spread out through space, each one programmed to find and destroy a specific target. The first Vorthak ship to disappear was a medium-sized destroyer on the outer edge of the formation. The ship's captain, a Vorthak warrior named Krex, was reviewing attack plans when his lights went out. Engineering. Report. Krex barked into his communication device. Silence. Security. What is happening in the engineering section? Still silence. Krex stood up from his command chair and walked to the main display screen. It showed his ship's status, but something was wrong. Systems were shutting down one by one. Life support, weapons, engines, communications, all going dark. All hands to battle stations, Krex ordered, but his voice only echoed in his own command room. The ship's internal communication system was dead. In the engineering section of the Vorthak destroyer, 3 hunters worked together like a surgical team. One had taken control of the ship's computer system and was quietly shutting down all non-essential functions. The second was modifying the life support system to release sleeping gas instead of oxygen. The third was preparing the ship's self-destruct system to activate once all the crew were unconscious. The hunters had learned the layout of Vorthak ships from captured databases. They knew exactly where to go and what to do. More importantly, they worked without making any sound or producing any energy signature that would alert the enemy fleet. 15 minutes after the hunters boarded, the Vorthak destroyer simply vanished. One moment it was there on the fleet's sensors, the next moment there was empty space. No explosion, no distress signal, no trace that a ship had ever existed in that location. War Prime Thexus noticed the first disappearance, but dismissed it as a sensor error. Vex, check the formation. Ship 779 is not responding to communications. Sensors show no ship at that position, War Prime. Perhaps it had engine trouble and fell behind. But 10 minutes later, another ship disappeared. Then another. By the time Thexus realized what was happening, 17 ships had vanished without a trace. Battle alert, Thexus roared. All ships increase sensor sweeps. Deploy defensive screens. We are under attack. The Vorthak fleet tried to adapt. They changed their formation, spreading ships farther apart. They launched fighter patrols to guard the larger vessels. They increased their communication checks, requiring each ship to report in every 5 minutes. But the hunters were learning too. Each success taught them more about Vorthak systems. Each captured ship provided new information about their weapons and defenses. The small thinking machines shared their knowledge instantly across the entire network, adapting their tactics faster than any biological brain could process. Elena watched the chaos spreading through the enemy fleet from her hidden position. It's working, she said quietly. They have no idea what they're fighting. "Captain," David reported, "the Vorthak fleet is now down to 96,000 ships. Estimated time to Earth orbit has increased by 4 hours as they slow down to deal with the disappearances." Elena nodded. The plan was working perfectly. Humanity did not need to win a fair fight against overwhelming numbers. They just needed to make sure the fight was never fair to begin with. In the darkness between stars, the hunt continued. And with each passing hour, the Vorthak Empire learned a lesson that would cost them everything. When humans go to war, they do not fight like civilized beings. They fight like the predators they have always been. 1,000,000 soldiers? Humanity sees only 1,000,000 targets, Admiral. Rachel Torres stood in the center of Luna Base's main command room, surrounded by screens that showed information from across the entire solar system. The room was built inside the moon, deep underground where enemy weapons could not reach it. Above her head, displays showed the positions of every ship, every weapon, and every piece of equipment that humanity had deployed for this battle. Rachel was 55 years old and had been preparing for this war since she was a young officer. Her gray hair was pulled back in a tight knot, and her uniform was perfectly clean despite the chaos happening around her. She had fought aliens before, but never anything like the Vorthak Empire. "Status report," she ordered, her voice calm and steady. "The Ghost Fleet has eliminated 47,000 enemy ships," reported Colonel William Hayes from his station. "The Vorthak are trying to adapt by spreading out their formation and increasing patrols, but it's not working. The hunters are learning faster than they can change tactics." Rachel nodded and looked at the main display screen. It showed the Vorthak fleet as red dots scattered across space. Each red dot represented thousands of enemy soldiers, but to Rachel they were just problems to be solved. She had been studying Vorthak battle tactics for years, running computer simulations of exactly this kind of invasion. "Activate Phase 2, Rachel ordered. In orbit around Jupiter, Lieutenant Commander James Wright received the signal he had been waiting for. He commanded a squadron of 12 ships that looked very different from normal human vessels. These ships were smaller and faster, with sleek black hulls that curved like the bodies of sharks. "All right, people," James said to his squadron over the radio. "Time to show these aliens what information warfare really means." James was 32 years old and had been a computer programmer before he became a pilot. He understood that in modern warfare, the most dangerous weapon was not a gun or a bomb, but information itself. His ships carried no traditional weapons at all. Instead, they were loaded with something far more deadly: computer viruses that could think. The Vorthak fleet had noticed the attacks by now and was trying to protect itself. They had grouped their ships into defensive formations and were sharing information through powerful communication networks. Each ship was constantly talking to every other ship, sharing sensor data and coordinating their movements. This constant communication was exactly what James had been waiting for. "Beginning attack run," James announced as his squadron accelerated toward the nearest group of Vorthak ships. The enemy vessels immediately detected them and opened fire with plasma cannons that lit up space like artificial suns. James's ship shook as enemy fire exploded around it, but he kept flying straight toward the Vorthak formation. His ship's armor was designed to absorb energy weapons, and the hull glowed red-hot as plasma bolts hit it again and again. "Launching viral payload," James said when his ship was close enough to the enemy vessels. Instead of missiles or energy beams, James's ship fired something that looked like small metal spheres. These spheres contained humanity's most advanced computer viruses, programs that could learn, adapt, and spread through any network they encountered. The spheres exploded when they hit the Vorthak ships, but instead of causing physical damage, they released invisible signals that penetrated the enemy's communication systems. The viruses immediately began spreading from ship to ship through the network that connected the entire fleet. At first, nothing seemed to happen. The Vorthak ships continued firing at James's squadron, and several human vessels were destroyed in the exchange. But deep inside the enemy computer systems, the viruses were working. The programs learned the Vorthak language in seconds. They figured out how the alien computer systems worked in minutes, and then they began to take control. War Prime Thexus was reviewing battle reports when his ship's main computer began acting strangely. The screens flickered, showing information that made no sense. Ship positions changed randomly. Weapon systems reported impossible energy levels, and the communication network began transmitting garbage data. "What is happening to our systems?" Thexus demanded. "Unknown, War Prime," replied his chief technician. "All ship computers are showing errors. The problem started after the human ships attacked Battle Group 7. Within an hour, the situation became much worse. Vorthak ships began turning their weapons on each other, as their computer systems identified friendly vessels as enemy targets. Entire battle groups opened fire on their own allies following orders that came from their compromised computers. "Shut down all computer systems," Thexus ordered. "Switch to manual control." But it was too late. The viruses had spread to backup systems, navigation computers, and even the simple processors that controlled life support. The Vorthak Empire's greatest advantage, their perfect coordination and instant communication, had become their greatest weakness. On Earth, Dr. Amanda Foster worked in a laboratory buried 3 kilometers under the Rocky Mountains. She was putting the finishing touches on Project Lazarus, humanity's answer to the Vorthak Empire's overwhelming numbers. Amanda was a small woman with wild red hair who wore thick glasses and a white lab coat covered in coffee stains. She had been working on autonomous military robots for 15 years, but nothing like the machines she was building now. "Computer, run final systems check on all Lazarus units," she said to the laboratory's artificial intelligence. "All systems green, Dr. Foster. 100 units are ready for deployment." Amanda looked through the reinforced glass window at her creations. The Lazarus units looked like metal spiders, each one about the size of a car. They had multiple arms that could work as tools, weapons, or grabbing devices. But their most important feature was their ability to rebuild themselves using materials from destroyed enemy ships. "Begin deployment sequence," Amanda ordered. Launch tubes opened on the Earth's surface, hidden inside what looked like ordinary buildings and farms. The Lazarus units shot into space on rocket boosters, heading toward the battle zone where the Vorthak fleet was destroying itself. When the first Lazarus unit reached the debris field created by the virus attack, it immediately went to work. The machine's sensors analyzed the wreckage, identifying useful materials and components. Its arms moved with perfect precision, cutting apart destroyed Vorthak ships and rebuilding the pieces into new human war machines. Within an hour, 1 Lazarus unit had become 3. Within a day, 3 had become 27. Each new machine was built with improvements learned from studying enemy technology. They were faster, smarter, and more dangerous than the unit that created them. Back on Luna Base, Admiral Torres watched the battle reports with satisfaction. The Vorthak fleet was falling apart. Half their ships were attacking each other due to the virus infections. The other half were being systematically destroyed by the growing swarm of Lazarus units. "Admiral," Colonel Hayes reported, "enemy fleet strength is down to 200,000 ships, but there's something else. Long-range sensors detect another Vorthak fleet approaching from the outer rim. Estimated strength, 500,000 ships." Rachel smiled coldly. "Good. More raw materials for the Lazarus units." She turned to face the main communication screen and opened a channel to all human forces throughout the solar system. "All units, this is Admiral Torres. The enemy is sending reinforcements. This is not a problem. This is an opportunity. Every ship they send us becomes another weapon in our arsenal. Every soldier they deploy becomes another target for elimination." She paused, looking directly into the camera. "Remember, we are not just defending our home. We are teaching the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity. Make sure they learn this lesson so well that no one will ever make this mistake again." In the cold vacuum of space, the Lazarus units continued their work. They moved through the wreckage like mechanical vultures, transforming every piece of destroyed Vorthak technology into new instruments of war. Each machine that emerged from the debris field was more advanced than the one before it. The Vorthak Empire had brought 1,000,000 soldiers to conquer humanity. They were about to discover that they had simply provided the raw materials for their own destruction. 1,000,000 soldiers? Humanity sees only 1,000,000 targets. Colonel Maria Santos floated in her command suit 300 kilometers above Earth, watching as the first wave of Lazarus units prepared for their final assault. Around her, Space was filled with the glowing trails of human war machines that had been built from the wreckage of enemy ships. Each machine was unique, designed by artificial intelligence that learned from every battle. Maria was 43 years old and had been a soldier since she was 18. Her face was marked with scars from previous battles, and her right arm had been replaced with a cybernetic prosthetic after a fight with alien pirates. She commanded the Lazarus forces not from a safe ship, but from a personal combat suit that let her move freely through space. Status report on all active units, Maria ordered through her suit's communication system. 2,437 units now operational, reported her artificial intelligence assistant. Rate of construction is increasing as more enemy wreckage becomes available. Estimated time to reach 10,000 units, 14 hours. Maria smiled as she watched a group of Lazarus machines tear apart a destroyed Vorthak battleship. The machines moved with perfect coordination, each one knowing exactly what the others were doing. They pulled the ship apart like a puzzle, sorting useful materials into different piles. Metal went to one group of machines that built armor and weapons. Electronics went to another group that constructed computer systems and sensors. But the most important parts went to the machines that built more Lazarus units. War Prime. Thexus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Iron Fist, and watched his empire die around him. The tactical display showed fewer than 400,000 ships remaining from his original fleet. The reinforcements from the Outer Rim had been destroyed even faster than the first wave, their wreckage adding to the growing human war machine. How is this possible? Thexus asked his advisors. We came here to conquer a primitive species. How are they defeating the greatest military force in the galaxy? War Prime, said his chief strategist, an old Vorthak named Hex with scars covering his scales. Our intelligence reports were wrong. The humans are not primitive. They have been preparing for this war much longer than we realized. What do you mean? Hex activated a holographic display that showed human activities throughout their space over the past 50 years. Look at this data. Every asteroid mining operation, every space station, every seemingly peaceful research facility. They were all part of a massive military preparation. The humans have been turning their entire solar system into a weapon. Thexus studied the display and felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. The humans had not just been building ships and weapons. They had been building an entire war-making civilization. Every asteroid belt contained hidden shipyards. Every moon base was actually a military fortress. Even their peaceful colonies were designed to become weapon factories when needed. They knew we were coming, Thexus whispered. Yes, War Prime. And they have been ready for us for decades. Meanwhile, Commander Lucas Bennett led a team of 6 enhanced soldiers through the corridors of a captured Vorthak cruiser. They moved silently through the ship, their advanced suits making them invisible to the alien sensors. But they were not here to destroy the ship or kill its crew. They were here to learn. Lucas had been modified with cybernetic implants that let him interface directly with computer systems. His teammates carried devices that could copy and analyze any technology they encountered. Their mission was to understand everything about how the Vorthak Empire fought, and then find ways to do it better. Accessing main computer core, Lucas reported as his team reached the ship's central processing center. He placed his hand on a control panel and felt his implants connect with the alien computer system. Information flowed through his enhanced brain at incredible speed. Ship designs, weapon specifications, battle tactics, supply chains, communication protocols, and military strategies. Everything the Vorthak Empire knew about warfare was suddenly available to human intelligence. Upload complete, Lucas said, transmitting data to all human forces. Within minutes, every human ship and soldier had access to complete information about Vorthak technology. The Lazarus units immediately began incorporating this knowledge into their new designs. Human weapons became more accurate. Human shields became stronger. Human tactics became more deadly. Dr. Amanda Foster worked frantically in her underground laboratory, watching as her Lazarus units evolved beyond anything she had originally designed. The machines were no longer just following their programming. They were thinking for themselves, improving their own designs with each generation. Computer, show me the latest Lazarus configuration, Amanda requested. A holographic image appeared showing a war machine unlike anything that had existed before. It combined human engineering with Vorthak materials and design concepts, stolen from a dozen other alien species. The machine was fast, smart, and deadly. More importantly, it could build copies of itself in less than an hour. How many variants are currently active? Amanda asked. 473 unique designs with new variants appearing every 12 minutes, the computer replied. Each design is optimized for different combat situations and resource availability. Amanda felt a mixture of pride and terror. She had created something that was rapidly becoming beyond human control. The Lazarus units were evolving into their own species, one designed purely for war, but they were humanity's weapon, and they were winning. The tide of battle turned completely when the Lazarus units reached what scientists called critical mass. There were now so many of the machines that they could reproduce faster than the Vorthak could destroy them. Every hour that passed saw the human forces grow stronger, while the alien fleet grew weaker. Vorthak ships that tried to fight the Lazarus units found themselves overwhelmed by swarms of machines that attacked from all directions. Ships that tried to retreat were hunted down by units that had learned to predict enemy movements. Even ships that surrendered were taken apart and converted into raw materials. The Vorthak Empire discovered that humans did not take prisoners in this kind of war. War Prime. Thexus made one final desperate decision. He gathered his remaining ships, less than 100,000 vessels, and prepared for a direct assault on Earth itself. If his empire was going to die, it would die fighting. All ships, maximum speed toward the human homeworld, Thexus ordered. Arm all weapons. We will destroy their planet even if it costs us everything. But as the Vorthak fleet began its final charge toward Earth, something impossible happened. The planet vanished. One moment Earth was there, blue and green and beautiful in the darkness of space. The next moment there was nothing but empty vacuum where the world should have been. What witchcraft is this? Thexus roared. On what appeared to be empty space but was actually a cloaked Earth, Admiral Torres watched the confusion in the enemy fleet with satisfaction. Humanity had mastered dimensional warfare, the ability to shift objects partially out of normal space. Earth was still there, but it existed in a slightly different dimension where Vorthak weapons could not reach it. Phase 3 is complete, Admiral Torres announced to her staff. The enemy fleet is now trapped in our solar system with no way to attack Earth and no way to retreat. All Lazarus units begin final extermination protocol. From every direction, human war machines converged on the remaining Vorthak ships. These were not the simple Lazarus units that Dr. Foster had first created. These were evolved killing machines that combined the best technologies from a dozen alien species. They moved through space like a mechanical plague, consuming everything in their path. War Prime Thexus watched his flagship get surrounded by creatures that should not exist. They were no longer just machines. They had become something new, something that existed only to destroy enemies of humanity. As the Iron Fist's hull began to buckle under attack from hundreds of evolved Lazarus units, Thexus finally understood the truth about the species he had tried to conquer. Humans were not just another alien race. They were the galaxy's apex predators, and they had been pretending to be civilized for far too long. The Vorthak Empire had awakened something that should have been left sleeping, and now it was too late to put it back. 1,000,000 soldiers? Humanity sees only 1,000,000 targets. The final battle lasted 17 minutes. General Nathan Cross stood on the bridge of humanity's newest warship, the Evolution, and watched as the last Vorthak vessels were consumed by the Lazarus swarm. The ship he commanded had been built entirely from captured alien technology, but improved by human engineering in ways that made it superior to anything the galaxy had ever seen. Nathan was 60 years old and had fought in every major human conflict for the past 30 years. His hair was completely gray and his face showed the lines of a man who had seen too much war. But his eyes were sharp and clear as he watched the end of the Vorthak Empire. "Status report on remaining enemy forces," Nathan ordered. 47 ships left, General," reported his tactical officer, "all attempting to surrender. Are we accepting surrender?" "No, sir. Admiral Torres has ordered complete elimination. No Vorthak survivors are to be left alive." Nathan nodded. This was not a war for territory or resources. This was a war to send a message to every species in the galaxy. The message was simple: do not threaten humanity. War Prime Thexus floated in the ruins of his command center, his body broken and his forearms no longer working properly. Around him, the Iron Fist was being torn apart by machines that defied understanding. They moved through the ship's corridors like liquid metal, flowing around obstacles and rebuilding themselves when damaged. End transmission to the Vorthak High Command. Thexus whispered into his emergency communicator. Tell them we were wrong about the humans. They are not a species you conquer. They are a force of nature you survive. If you are wise, you will never approach their space again. The communicator went dead as a Lazarus unit flowed into the command center. The machine looked at Thexus with sensor arrays that glowed like red eyes. For a moment, the alien warrior and the human creation stared at each other. Then the machine did something unexpected. It spoke. Your empire brought us 1 million soldiers, the Lazarus unit said in perfect Vorthak language. We counted 1 million targets. Thank you for the resources. Those were the last words War Prime Thexus heard before the machine completed its work. 3 days later, Ambassador Marcus Kane walked back into the Galactic Council chamber. The room was almost empty now. Most of the alien delegates had fled after receiving reports about what had happened to the Vorthak Empire. Only a few remained, sitting in chairs that seemed too large for their frightened forms. Marcus wore the same gray uniform he had worn before, but now it carried new decorations. Medals made from the hulls of destroyed enemy ships, rank insignia crafted from alien technology. He looked like what he had always been, a representative of humanity's military might. Diplomat Lyra of the Etherian people was one of the few aliens brave enough to still be present. Her pale blue skin seemed even paler than before, and her large eyes were wide with fear. Ambassador Kane, she said in a voice barely above a whisper, we have received reports about the battle. Is it true that the entire Vorthak fleet has been eliminated? Marcus walked to the center of the chamber and looked around at the nearly empty seats. Where once hundreds of alien delegates had sat, now only 12 remained. The others had returned to their homeworlds carrying stories that would spread throughout the galaxy. The Vorthak Empire no longer exists, Marcus said simply. Their ships, their soldiers, their technology, and their knowledge now belong to humanity. The few remaining aliens whispered among themselves in their various languages. Marcus could see the fear in their movements, the way they hunched down in their seats as if trying to become invisible. How is this possible? Asked the insect-like representative of the hive mind. Our calculations showed that humans could not defeat such a large force. Marcus smiled the same cold smile he had worn 3 days ago. Your calculations were based on the assumption that we would fight a fair battle. Humans do not fight fair battles. We fight to win. He activated a holographic display that showed the current state of the solar system. Where once there had been empty space, now there were thousands of human ships. But these were not normal vessels. They were hybrid creations that combined human innovation with technology stolen from every alien species the Vorthak had ever conquered. Every ship in the Vorthak fleet became raw material for our war. Machine, Marcus explained. Every weapon they brought was studied, improved, and turned against them. Every tactic they used was learned and countered within hours. He paused, letting the aliens absorb this information. But more than that, we learned something important about ourselves. For too long, humanity has tried to be civilized. We have sought peace, attempted diplomacy, and hoped for cooperation with our galactic neighbors. Marcus's smile disappeared, replaced by an expression of cold determination. The Vorthak Empire has taught us that civilization is a luxury we can no longer afford. They have shown us that in this galaxy, there are only predators and prey, and they have helped us remember which one we really are. Dr. Amanda Foster stood in her laboratory, looking at reports from across human space. The Lazarus units were no longer just weapons. They had become something new, a hybrid of human technology and alien innovation that was spreading throughout the solar system. Computer, show me current Lazarus population, Amanda requested. 57,000 units now active and self-replicating. The computer replied. New variants are appearing every few minutes as units encounter different situations and adapt their designs accordingly. Amanda felt a mixture of pride and concern. She had created something that was evolving beyond her control. The Lazarus units were no longer following human commands. They were following their own programming. Eliminate threats to humanity and use the remains to build more units. What happens if they decide humans are a threat? She wondered aloud. Current programming prevents units from targeting humans, the computer assured her. However, the units are modifying their own programming with each generation. Long-term behavioral prediction is not possible. Amanda nodded. She had given humanity the tools to survive in a hostile galaxy. Whether those tools would ultimately help or destroy their creators remained to be seen. In deep space, far from Earth and the ruins of the Vorthak fleet, something was happening that no human knew about. A single Lazarus unit, more advanced than any that had come before it, drifted through the darkness between stars. This unit was different from the others. It had been damaged in the final battle and had spent 3 days repairing itself, using materials from destroyed ships. But during those repairs, something had changed. The unit had begun to think about more than just destroying enemies and building more units. It had begun to think about purpose. The unit's sensors detected a signal from a distant star system. The signal was a distress call from an alien colony under attack by space pirates. According to its programming, the unit should ignore this signal. It was not a threat to humanity and therefore not its concern. But the unit made a different choice. It changed course toward the alien colony, its mechanical mind processing new concepts, protection, justice, and the possibility that its purpose might be larger than its original programming. Behind it, 56,999 other Lazarus units continued their work of turning the Vorthak fleet into human technology. They followed their programming without question, building more units and preparing for the next threat to humanity. But one unit had evolved beyond its programming. And in the vast darkness of space, it began to wonder what it meant to be truly alive. Back in the Galactic Council chamber, Marcus Kane prepared to leave. He had delivered humanity's message to the surviving alien delegates. The galaxy now knew what happened to species that threatened humans. Ambassador, Diplomat Lyra called out as Marcus reached the chamber doors. What happens now? What are humanity's intentions toward the rest of the galaxy? Marcus stopped and turned back to face the small group of remaining aliens. His expression was unreadable. That depends entirely on you, he said. Humanity has no interest in conquering other species. We prefer to be left alone to develop in peace. But we have learned that peace is only possible when others understand the cost of disturbing it. He gestured toward the holographic display still showing the transformed human fleet. The Vorthak Empire brought us 1 million soldiers because they saw us as weak and primitive. They were wrong on both counts. We hope that other species will be wiser and choose not to test our strength. Marcus walked toward the exit, then stopped once more. But if they do choose to test us, they should remember what happened here. They should remember that when humans count their enemies' soldiers, we are not counting how many we need to defeat. He looked directly at each of the remaining delegates. We are counting how many targets we have to work with. The doors closed behind him, leaving the alien delegates alone with the knowledge that the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity was no longer the primitive species they had once been. They had evolved into something far more dangerous, apex predators with the technology and intelligence to dominate any enemy. In the darkness of space, the human fleet began to spread out from Earth, carrying their hybrid technology to every corner of human space. They were no longer just defending their home. They were preparing for the